Straight all day.
Now tuned in to the best show in the audio production world. This is the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves anyone out there to go make things happen and stop waiting for things to happen. You know what I'm talking about? We put all that together into one bundle, one package. What you get is the mindset, method, the philosophy, the book, the show, known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to make the most of what you already have. Now, we talked about this from the business sense, or we touched on it, let's say, in yesterday's episode, which was about diversifying your value delivery. And I talked briefly about repurposing the things that you've already created so that you can create a new piece of value from an existing piece of value. Often we move on to the next thing, whatever the next thing may be in our lives and our businesses and everything, without squeezing all the value of the current opportunity that we could have gotten out of it. So we got all these half dug graves. Let's use a different example. All these half dug wells. Let's use that. Let's not call them graves. All these half dug wells that we didn't finish digging, and then we move on to the next one. And we don't even realize. It's not even that not even that we're not finishing because we're doing it on purpose. Is that we don't even realize we haven't finished digging everything we could out of this well before we start digging the next well. So today's topic is to get you more conscious of the fact that you could dig a whole lot more out of the current well before you move on to the next one. And episode number 169, I'll refer you back to. The topic was you already have everything that you need. As we are being bombarded with new stuff every single day. And when I say new stuff, I'm talking about in every area of life. There's always something new popping up, right? There's this new person we need to be paying attention to. There's this new YouTube channel. There's this new podcast. There's this new software. There's this new app that you could be using. Hey, listen to this new idea that I heard about, or read this new blog post, or listen to this new record, this new song that some rapper put out. There's always something new coming out every single day. No matter what you do, what industry you're in, there's always some new thing coming around, right? As we're being bombarded with this stuff, we tend to lose sight of the things that we already have, the things that we've already been working on, and they get buried under this pile of newness, so to speak, is being thrown at us every single day. And the thing about the pile is it's not getting any smaller. The pile is getting larger and larger. So it's getting harder and harder for us when we get distracted by all these new things. Harder and harder for us to stay focused on the things that we were already working on. The old things, if you want to call them old, or the current things that you were already working on before the new stuff came and possibly interrupted you. I made videos on YouTube. I mean, I have thousands of videos on YouTube, but I made videos where I talked about certain topics or certain issues that people may have. And a lot of the videos that I made were answering questions that people kept asking me. So I made the video so I wouldn't have to keep answering the same question. And people still find those videos. They still surface 10, 9, 7, 6, 4 years later after I made them, because the topic is an evergreen topic and the answer is still the answer now that it was then when I recorded it. And people will leave comments on the video and they'll say something like, hey, Dre, could you make a new or an updated video on this specific topic? And I'll say to them, why? Everything I said in this video is 100% the answer, and it still applies now as it applied then when I originally said it. And they'll say something like, I've had people say this to me, I know that is true, but it's an old video. I just wanted you to make an updated version. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because what I realize in a lot of people's minds is that they just want a new version of something, even though the quote unquote old version or the current version or the one that has already existed is still perfectly fine, does everything that it needs to do. People just want something new because this is just the way that people's minds work. So if you're reading or listening in between the lines of what I just said there, any of you who's a salesperson, if you want to sell something to somebody, one of the smartest things you can do is come up with a way to position it as new, even though it may not really be new. And I don't consider that to be disingenuous. I don't think you're lying to your audience. If you create something that actually is new, even though it's a combination of old things, it's still new. Now, you took a couple things that already existed, put them into a combination that did not exist before. Now you got something new. That technically is new, even though you didn't have to do or go create something brand new from scratch. You created it from things that already existed. Why should you do this? Number one, because you already have a ton of value that people probably haven't squeezed all the juice out of. And number two, people are looking for something new. So you shouldn't go to someone and say, hey, this is the same old product that I've been offering for the last 10 years. You should get it now. It'd be much better if you said, hey, this is a new product. This is a new version of it that just came out right now. I guarantee you'll get more people's attention simply because you attach the word new to it. Now, don't lie to them. Make sure there's something new about it so that you're telling the truth when you say something is new. So what all you need to understand, if you didn't catch both sides of what I said there, is when it comes to you getting the most value out of yourself, you need to focus on the current situations and even the past objects that you've been dealing with. Whatever you've been working with in the past, the quote old close quote stuff, you need to make sure you're squeezing all the value you can out of that old stuff for your own benefit. But when you are a salesperson and you're offering something to the public, offering something to the audience, your prospects, your customers, come up with some way, some reason, some angle that you can present it as new, because human beings, we are attracted to things that are new, even though we haven't gotten all the value we could have got out of the old. So don't tell people, hey, you just need to get more value out of the old stuff. I'm not making anything new. All right, that's not going to get you many sales. All right, tell them that you're giving them something new and it'll draw people to it like moths get drawn to a flame, as they say. I never seen a moth fly to a flame, but that's what they say. So while some new stuff for you can truly help you, sometimes you do need some new things to help you get over the hump that you're trying to get over. We should also, and this is today's topic, be vigilant to make sure that we are squeezing all we can out of what we already have. And today we're going to learn exactly how to do that. Point number one, today's topic once again is how to make the most of what you already have. Number one, it is easier to get more from something that is already giving than it is to break the seal on something new that has given you nothing yet. I want to say that point one more time, then we're going to dive into that so you understand what I mean. It is easier to get more from something that is already giving than it is to break the seal on something new. Now, I've given you this principle in many different forms, many different times here on Work on Your Game. Any of you who's ever gone job hunting has been given the advice: it is easier to get a job when you already have a job than it is to get a job when you're unemployed. Why is that? I'm not quite sure. I guess it's because people see you as hireable because you're already hired. Actually, I am sure that is the reason. We are more likely to desire something that is already desired by others than we are to desire something that it seems like nobody desires. So if you go on YouTube and you look up a certain topic and you see 3 available videos, one video has 300 views, another one has 3,000 views, another one has 3 million views, you're probably going to watch the video with 3 million views. Why is that? Social proof. The social proof is that a whole bunch of other people, 3 million to be exact, have already given this their stamp of approval by watching it. Whereas the other video, only 300 people have given it their stamp of approval. It must not be as good as the one that 3 million people have already given their check to, their social proof to. It's the same thing with having a job. If you have a job, that's social proof that you are hireable, and it'll make it more likely that somebody else is willing to hire you too. All right, somebody else did it. All right, I'll do it too. That's the way it works. It's much easier to get more out of where you already are than to try to get something, anything out of somewhere that you are not already. I told you in sales, it is much easier to make a second sale to a current customer than it is to make a first sale to a non-customer. Any of you who works in any type of sales where you do any form of marketing, you probably know exactly how much money it costs you to acquire a customer, whether that be in advertising, any type of promotions, a loss leader product that you have to sell. You know how much to the penny it costs you to acquire a brand new customer, and you also know that it costs you nothing to acquire a second sale to a current customer because they're already in. You don't have to spend any money to get them into your atmosphere, to get them knowing who you are, to get them to know, like, and trust you. They already did all that when they became a customer the first time. So it's much easier to make that second sale to the current customer. But what a lot of businesses fail to do is make that second sale, and they go looking for the new customer all the time instead of squeezing all the equity they can out of the current customer. Not in a negative way. Again, they're squeezing equity out of the current customer, and the customer is willing to give it because you're giving them more and more value. So ask yourself this question. Is the opportunity that you have right now better than anything brand new that you could start? That's a tough question to ask yourself if you're in an emotional space or things are not quite going the way that you want in your current opportunity. But you need to really sit back and ask yourself this. Maybe do an analysis. Write down all the pros and cons of your current situation and all the pros and cons of a new situation or trying to find a new situation, and then just weigh them. Give each one of them a weight from 1 to 5, add up the numbers, and then you'll know logically, does it make sense for me to go look for a new situation, or should I stay in my current situation and make more out of it since I'm already here? Here's another question. Have you maximized the current opportunity? Have you gotten everything you could get out of the current situation that you're in? Ask yourself that question logically. Maybe go get someone who you trust to keep it real with you and ask them the same question about you. Have I gotten everything I could get out of this opportunity? Tell me. Be honest with me. If you don't have anyone in your life who can be honest enough with you to answer that question, you need to go find someone. The challenge with this idea of getting more out of your current opportunity is that getting more out of where you already are, actually doing this and squeezing more juice out of the orange that you already possess, this is work. That's why the show is called Work on Your Game. This is why people say a relationship is work. You ever heard somebody say that? A relationship is work. Relationships are work. Any kind of relationship, a friendship, a business partnership, an intimate relationship, they are work. And if both partners are not willing to do the work, that relationship's not going to go too far. It's not going to last. It will be much less effort for all of us in all of life, any area of life, to just bounce from opportunity to opportunity. All right, let's work on the surface of this one. All right, this one ain't fun anymore. Let's move on to the next one. All right, that's not fun anymore. Let's move on to the next one. It'd be much easier for all of us to just do that. Much less effort to just go from chance to chance, opportunity to opportunity, new thing to new thing, or here's another new thing, here's another new thing. It'd be easy for all of us to do that. But the challenge with that, if we were to go that route, or any of you who has gone that route, I'm sure there are some, you never get deep into anything you're doing if you keep bouncing from new opportunity to new opportunity, if you don't stick around in any one place and do the work. Sticking around somewhere and doing the work builds you a resume. Build some credibility, gives you longevity. You start to get some privileges in a situation when you've been around for a long time that people who are brand new don't get. See, if you keep going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, always going to whatever is new, you're always the new guy or the new girl in that space. And the new guy or new girl usually doesn't get the same privileges as somebody who's been around for a while. Can we agree? You don't know the same things as someone who's been around for a while. You don't have the same skills as someone who's been around for a while because you're brand new. How are you going to have the skills? You ain't been there. But this is work. Sticking around somewhere where it's not brand new anymore. The effort is still required and you don't always feel like it. I got a phrase that I use to describe that. Maybe some of you caught it, or maybe not. We call this the third day. The third day is any situation in life when the newness has worn off, there's work that is required to be done, and guess who's responsible for doing it? That's the third day. And the third day is work. The third day requires effort. The third day requires discipline. It requires mental toughness. And not everybody has it. And this is why, as I told you at the top of this episode, the new thing usually sells a whole lot better than the old thing. Why? Because most people don't want to deal with the third day. So they just bounce around. As soon as it gets to the third day, let's go to something new. All right, third day here, go to something new. Third day here, go to something new. Because people don't want to deal with that. They don't want to buckle down and do that work. So where's the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen? Where everybody else is not going. Point number 2. Today's topic, how to make the most of what you already have. Masters in anything. People who become masters. They grow to develop mastery in what they do. These are people who go an inch wide and a mile deep on their specialty. I talked about this principle of inches and miles in episode number 1254. If you have not heard it, I suggest you go listen to it. Mastery. If you want to master what you do, first of all, go read the book Mastery by Robert Greene. And secondly, actually, let's reverse those. Secondly, read Robert Greene's book. First, go listen to episode 1254. Again, if you listened to it already. We value people who go deep. We value people who know their stuff so deeply because they've gone an inch wide and a mile deep. They know all there is to know in a space. I've heard one definition of an expert as a person who has made every possible mistake in an area. Not a person who knows everything, not a person who got everything right, not the person who made the most money, not the person who's been around the longest. The person who's made every possible mistake. Why? Because they've gone a mile deep. You go a mile deep in anything, you're going to make some mistakes. If your back hurts, for example, you got anybody listening to this got some back pain? All right. If your back is hurting and you got an option to go see two different doctors, would you rather see the general practitioner or the chiropractor? You gonna get any other information. One of them's a general practitioner, the other one's a chiropractor. Which one you want to see? You got to decide right now. Time's up. You're probably going to pick the chiropractor. Why? Because the chiropractor specializes in the back. If you're on trial for your life of a crime that you did not commit, but you have to go to trial and the prosecution is asking to put you in jail for life, who do you want defending you in court? Who do you want as a lawyer? Do you want a public defender or you want the best trial attorney in town? Time's up. Which one you want? You probably want the best trial attorney in town. But the thing is, the public defender is free. The trial attorney, it costs a little bit of money. Would you pay extra for the trial attorney? Of course you would. Why? It's not even extra to you, is it? Because your life is on the line. It's a necessity when your life's on the line. So it's not even extra. You're willing to pay that. You're willing. That's an investment to keep yourself out of jail and keep you, free to live. Becoming a master at what you do, like the chiropractor as opposed to the general practitioner, or the best trial attorney in town as opposed to the public defender, becoming a master at what you do is not easy. It's work, as we talked about in point number 1. I guarantee you the chiropractor's been through some third days. The best trial attorney in town, they've been through some third days. The masters who go an inch wide and a mile deep, they go through a whole lot of third days. Are you willing to do that? If you're not, then you will never become a master in anything. If you are, then you have the potential. You are eligible to become a master. Doesn't mean you'll get there, but you are eligible if you're willing to. If you're not willing to do this, you're not eligible. You shouldn't even be talking about it. If it was easy to become a master of what you do, if it was easy to go an inch wide and a mile deep, everybody will be a master of what they do. How many people do you know are masters of what they do? Not too many. There's only a handful. In every space, there's only a handful of people who are actually masters. And these days, because we can all control our public images, we can make ourselves look like we're masters of what we do, but not actually be masters. There's a lot of people who look like masters, but they ain't. People who are actually masters is the same amount now as it was 20 years ago. Only difference now from then is that we know about more people, but it doesn't mean more people are actually good. You understand? Because the same information is available. The same information that we all have access to now was around back then. More people have access to the information, but it doesn't mean more people are doing the work. The same number of people, same percentage of people who could and would do the work 20, 30, 40 years ago, that same percentage exists now and will exist 20 years from now. All the information can be available to everybody. That doesn't mean everybody is going to do the work. A lot of people use a lack of information as an excuse for their lack of achievement, but it's not a lack of information that stops people from achieving. It's a lack of their ability, and not ability, rather, the lack of their willingness to do the work. I'll give you all the information. You're going to do the work to get something out of that information? The answer from most people is no. Now, most people say yes, but look at their actions. Answer is no. Watch them on the third day. Do they even show up? Most people don't. Going a mile deep requires a whole lot of digging. Are you willing to dig that deep with your one shovel? Point number 3. Today's topic is how to make the most of what you already have. You got to get creative. To make the most of what you already have, you may have to look at your current resources from a different angle, from which you've already been looking at them. Because if you just look at what you have the same way that you've always looked at it, what are you going to see? The same thing you've always seen, right? That's the reason why you may think you have gotten everything you can out of your current situation, because you keep looking at it the same way. You look at it from a different angle, you want to see different things. There's a story in the 48 Laws of Power in chapter number, I believe it's chapter 4, which is win through your actions, never through argument. There was a city, he was like a king or something. This guy, he was commissioned an architect to build some building for him. And when the king went to see what the architect had built these 2 pillars that went from the floor to the ceiling, which is basically ostensibly the king thought that the pillars were built to hold up the rest of the building, so the building wouldn't collapse on everyone's heads. But the pillars were actually just for design. They were just part of the design that the architect had put in. But the king believing himself to be more knowledgeable than the architect, which makes no sense. The king said, no, those pillars, no, you need to build another pillar because the ceiling is going to collapse. The roof is going to collapse on everybody's head. And I'd be afraid to even to stay in this palace because it looks like the building is all going to collapse. Now, the architect was an actual engineer. The architect knew that the building was not going to collapse, but he was not in a position of power. The king was the one in power, so he did not argue with the king. Pay attention. Didn't argue with him. He went and built the pillars that the king demanded be built, even though the king had no idea of engineering, didn't know what he was talking about, didn't understand the math. He built the pillars, but he let the pillars stop just short of the ceiling, but you wouldn't notice it unless you were all the way up there. And years later, it says some men who were working on the scaffolding up near the ceiling of the room noticed that the pillars didn't even go up to the ceiling. So the engineer proved his point. He let posterity prove his point that the pillars were not necessary, but at the same time, he satisfied what the king needed. But the point that I'm making is the king just needed to look at things from a different angle. When the king saw the perspective that the pillars had been built, was they actually the ones that he asked for hadn't really been built, he saw things differently, even though nothing had actually changed. You need to figure out the other ways to use what you have that add to the ways that you've already exhausted, tried, thought of so far. But the thing is, you may not be privy to these additional ways. So you may need a little bit of help with this. You may need some devices that will help you come up with some creative ways of thinking. Like someone who can provide you with some ideas. How about my book called 101 Content Ideas? You can find that online. You're already online. When pro basketball wasn't quite working the way that I wanted it to work for me in the middle of my career, I asked myself a creative question. The question was, how can I still do basketball stuff while at the same time taking back some career control, some control over my destiny? That was a great question, a very creative question, a great question, a key question that had I not asked that question, you wouldn't be listening to my voice right now. The answer to that question led to me creating more content, me putting videos on YouTube consistently, me creating my own products. It may seem like a very simple answer now, but I asked myself that question before everybody else was doing it, before we were even calling it social media, before there was such thing as a YouTuber, before we were calling it content. That's when I asked this question. So it was a very creative question then. Might be a simple one now, but it was a creative one then. And that was the insight that powered the creation of my brand. You need to come up with some creative questions that will lead to some creative answers, that will lead to some different actions that will allow you to see things from a different angle, even though you're looking at the exact same material. There's a book out there called How to Get Everything You Can Out of All You've Got by a guy by the name of Jay Abraham. This is a great book that is chock full of ideas for businesses to maximize their returns. And even though most of what Jay Abraham talked about in the book was for brick and mortar businesses, I think he wrote this book even before the internet was as big as the internet is. The ideas in the book, the principles that he uses, the concepts that he comes up with to help businesses maximize their returns, you can apply this to anything that you do in life. You don't even have to apply it to business. You could apply this to something you're doing online. You could apply it to how you're dealing with people. If you're a school teacher, you could apply it to that. If you are running in some type of organization, volunteer organization, if you're running a charity, if you're heading up a family, you need to get everybody organized and get more out of what your family's doing, you can utilize the ideas in this book. Again, the title is How to Get Everything You Can Out of All You've Got. The author is Jay Abraham. But then this point number 3, getting creative. What does it mean to be creative? To me, it just means looking at things from a different angle from which you've already looked at things. What's a new angle at which you can look at stuff? What are some insightful questions you can ask yourself? An insightful question is a question that will cause you to think differently, and one which you probably or maybe don't have the answer to immediately. It's okay to not have the answer to an insightful question. Because if you don't have the answer, that means you got to think about it. It means you got to combine some ideas that you already have possibly in order to come up with the answer. That's a good thing, because now you're challenging your mind. You're giving your mind an exercise. You're giving your mind some cardio to do, like we talked about a couple of days ago. Get creative with your thinking. If you need even more help, then how about you go find somebody who is a creative thinker, or somebody you think is a creative thinker, and ask them to give you a couple ideas. Or how about you go find someone who may have been in your same situation, who's doing some different things now. See what they're doing, steal a couple of their ideas and use it in your own way. All right, don't plagiarize them, but you find a way to use it in your own way. These are all ways you can get creative. Go look around at other people who are taking similar pieces of what you're doing, not your stuff, but they're doing similar things to what you're doing, but they're producing different results and doing things in a different way, and see what ideas of theirs you can lift and use in your own way to create your own thing. Listen, no idea is completely original. Every idea is built on something that came in the past. So getting creative does not necessarily mean you sit down in an empty room and become this evil genius who just comes up with ideas randomly and is just a talent of yours. Maybe you don't have that talent. That's okay. You had a talent of observation. You had a talent of, you know how to read, you know how to write, you know how to pay attention, you know how to listen, right? If you can do those things, you can get ideas from other people and combine them in creative ways. You can come up with something brand new that did not exist before you did it. And then people will be thinking you're the creative genius, even though all you did was combine things that you already saw out there. So let's recap today's topic, which is how to make the most of what you already have. In episode number 169, talked about you already have everything you need. Listen to that episode. But understand that as we are bombarded with new stuff every single day, these days, we tend to lose sight of things that we already have. They're all buried under this pile of newness that's always being thrown at us. While some of this new stuff can help, we got to be vigilant about making sure we're maximizing the returns off the old stuff, the current stuff that we already have, so that we're not leaving a whole bunch of tubes of toothpaste without all the paste being squeezed out of it. Point number one. It's easier to get more from something that's already giving than it is to break the seal on something new. So ask yourself, is the opportunity that you have right now, is it really better than the new thing you're thinking about? Have you really maximized everything you could out of your current opportunity? I'm 99% sure the answer is no. So the challenge with this idea is that it's work. It's work to get more out of something that you think you have gotten a lot out of already. But if you don't go deep in what you're doing, you can never get to the second point, which is mastery. Masters go an inch wide and a mile deep on their specialties, and we value them accordingly. We will pay them accordingly. I talked about this in episode number 1254. If your back hurts, you're going to go to the chiropractor over the general practitioner. If you're on trial for life, you'll take the best trial attorney in town over the public defender. And in both situations, you are more than willing to pay more for the master than you are than the generalizer. And you don't even see it as extra. You see it as a necessity because it's that important that this person gets it right the first time that they're doing it. Going a mile deep, ladies and gentlemen, requires a whole lot of digging. You will go through a whole lot of third days going a mile deep. And if you're not willing to do that, you can never become a master of what you do. Thusly, your prices are always going to have to be in competition with others. Thusly, you'll never get the real value you deserve out of your talent if you're not willing to deal with the third day, develop the mastery, and thusly be able to set your own price that people are more than willing and happy to pay. Point number 3, get creative. There are more ways to use what you have than what you have done thus far. You just may not be privy to those additional ways. So all you got to do is ask yourself some creative, insightful questions that will cause you to think differently, cause you to have to put together some ideas in different ways, cause you to have to figure out, hey, how am I going to make this work and make this work and make that work? The creative questions that you ask yourself will create the insights, even though you may not have the answers, that will cause you to come up with new ways of thinking, cause you to look at other things that you may not have paid attention to before, grab some ideas from different places, put them all together, come up with something brand new, and people will be looking at you like the genius. Read the book, How to Get Everything You Can Out of All You Got. Again, the author is Jay Abraham. Work on your game. Dre all